We're going to take you, I guess, on a little journey to start with, because I don't believe we can start building in welfare, well-being and looking after our staff and the people that work for our businesses until we actually understand some of the root causes. And we'll go on a little bit of a journey which might be a little bit hard-hitting in some places, but we're going to talk about some stats and some figures. It's interesting because we are here. Perception, I think, leads into a lot of the problems of discussing mental health and well-being in the workplace. Now, if you take, for once being on the stage with my brother, the perception would be which one plays football, which one plays rugby. Exactly. Rugby player, football player. It's a very, very different from when we first walk in. You look at that. I hate rugby.
I can't stand football.
So,
I'm in heaven being here.
So I'll pass over to Matt to do a little bit of introduction about himself, and then we'll get on to some of the slides, and we've got a video that I want to play. I won't play all of it, but I want to play just a little bit, and it gives us that background of the story I think we need to understand.
So just to give you a little bit of context as to why I'm up here, you rather than Adam. A while ago I was working in restaurants and catering, and I started specialising in health and safety and started wanting to learn more about health and safety. So that's how I've got into this route. So I started qualifying with NEBOSH, passed an exam, but during that there was an incident in our family. Our father passed away, and what struck me was the difference that each company we worked for and each line manager that we worked for, how they dealt with our state of mind between my brother, myself and my sister. And so I started looking at the health aspect of health and safety. And that combined with my own experiences of mental health, poor mental health issues in the past, kind of led me to where I am today, and that's studying, I'm a mental health first aider, I'm a mental health first aid instructor, I've studied well-being, and I'm currently studying to be a physical trainer and a nutritionist, not because I want to be, but because I want to understand that side of the industry and that side of well-being as well. So it's about understanding the whole person and how well-being, how you can influence that.
So I won't play this all, but I think we have to understand where some of these issues start, and the time that they start, and the responsibilities that people in this room have. So just going to play a quick video, if this works.
I was about 16 when I was diagnosed with depression. My doctors think that it stemmed from my parents divorcing and struggling with school, really.
It all started when my father died when I was at high school.
It all started in university during my final year.
It all started when I was 16. I came out of a relationship I was in at the time, and I started purging and self-harming.
I first realised I had a mental health problem when I was 15. I was cutting myself every day and crying all the time.
Soon after the attack happened, I started to feel throes of anxiety, panic attacks started creeping in.
I first realised that I had a problem when I really wanted to stop all the things I was doing, but I just couldn't seem to stop no matter how badly I wanted to.
I was suffering from hallucinations, which at the time were really scary because I didn't know what was reality and what was my imagination.
At my worst, I felt like I was absolutely worthless, alienating and destructive, with no help of recovery.
I felt like I had this black cloud hanging constantly over my head, and it's just a feeling that stays with you and you can't seem to get away from it at all, and you feel completely alone.
I felt like this was going to be it forever.
Well, as I say, it goes on for a while, but I think the stories in there show you the different types of reasons and times in life that people start coming into trouble. And I think school and university life is a key driver now in how I remember you leave school, you get home, you ride your bike, you're playing in the park, you're playing football. Your friends came around, knocked on your door, asked if you could go out. But if you had troubles at school, they were kind of left at the school gate as you walked out. Unfortunately now, as we know with social media, technology and everything else, that doesn't happen. That follows them out of the school gate into their own homes, into their own lives, and it's very damaging, and they can't get away from. Let's be honest. I wouldn't want to be a child now. I liked being a child when I was, because I got a break from everything that was impacting my life. And it's interesting. I put it on there. What do you ask at the interview process? Because we interview these young people coming into our workplace. We're designing or trying to design workplaces that support them. But actually, you probably asked through a questionnaire if they've got any health issues. So they might turn around and say, I've got asthma, I've got X, Y, Z. But actually, you never actually ask them how they feel. You're never actually asking them if they've got any issues. And they won't tell you either, because they feel that won't give them the opportunity to get the job. Let's be perfectly honest, as I put it sort of bluntly, if I turned up with a broken leg, you wouldn't even think about that when you're going through the interview process. I do wonder if I turned around and said that I was struggling with my mental health, what that would do in that process. But we know it's not coming up. All right. But we know on the bottom here with some smiley faces and some sad faces through the journey of kids. So it's about technology. And that escapism that they just don't seem to be able to have. And I think it's also, when we look at school, there's two sides to people as well. And I think expectation has a massive challenge in our school and university life. So again, playing in that perception point of view, there's one of us that absolutely struggle through school with dyslexia, with being able to have to wear glasses with patches over their eyes, with bullying, all sorts of different things through their school life. And one of us actually excelled through school, went to university, got a top job in London. Which person would you perceive that would have the mental health issues or have got to a point where they didn't feel they could cope? It wasn't the person that excelled. The expectation and the pressure put on that person to accelerate through and have that job in London at such a young age doing, was very different, where the other person managed to build the building blocks slowly, learn their way through, fight their way through, and actually didn't have an impact. So perception, I think, plays a massive role in this. And you start building up sort of resilience when you can slowly build the building blocks to your life, where sometimes if you're just sailing through, no one's ever asked you if you're okay. And that's just something to always remember when you get some high flyers coming in through to the business. They might not be okay. It's an interesting point. So work life. So we've just realised that school now is 24/7. If they're in a situation, it follows them around. They've now come to you and start work. So we want to ask you just a couple of questions. Who has a work mobile phone? Or two. Yep. Who receives emails and calls out of hours? Okay. Who sleeps in the same room as their work phone? Okay. Who checks their phone the second they wake up, probably even before they've turned around and seen their kids? So, we're open 24 hours a day. So, I'm a youngster. I've gone through school. My life is open to whatever is influencing me as a kid, 24 hours a day. The minute I walk into work, my work is 24 hours a day. This is where we, as people, are we actually meant to be working at that kind of level? Are we actually checking on people through that process? Because, let's be honest, we're now 24/7 and there's no way of escaping it. And that's from the second we probably get that first phone in our hands, and that's at the age of probably now, sort of 9, 10 on average, I would say, when you're going into some of the most important years of your life all the way through. So, on that,
I'm going to take you through what is typically my day. So, I do try and get 8 hours sleep. I get up in the morning, about half an hour to wake up, shower, have breakfast. I drive an hour to my office. I then spend 7.5 hours, my daily allowance at work. I'll take my lunch break at work. I will probably spend half an hour just polishing things up at the end, chatting to people, going over the last few bits of the day. Then I've got an hour's drive home. Then I have to get home and I have to cook dinner or make the packed lunches for the kids. I then have to eat my dinner. I have to get the kids ready for bed, and then I have to get ready for bed. So that takes 21.5 hours out of my day if I get 8 hours sleep. So that leaves me with 2.5 hours a day to spend time with my family, my kids, doing household chores, running my own business, helping kids with their homework. And on top of that, I've got to be dad taxi. So I've got to take the kids to their clubs and sit in a car park. Some people love that bit because it gives them time on their own to do what they want to do. For me, as an introvert, walking into a room full of people you don't know and talking to them is a big struggle and it's a big effort. Hence, it's a little bit ironic, but what do we have to sacrifice to get in our family time? Well, am I able to sacrifice my hour's drive to work? If I can do that, maybe I could move to a closer job. Am I going to be able to sacrifice my 7.5 hours at work? Or are you going to tell me I can't because I need to be at work at this time between 9 and 5? So what goes? Your sleep goes. You sacrifice that time with dinner with the kids. You sacrifice putting the kids to bed. You sacrifice the end for work. So work plays a massive factor in the well-being. And what I would like to do is I'd like to see people have flexibility within that structure so that if I'm at work, I can go and drop the kids off at school. I can cook the kids dinner while I'm at work. And that's the ultimate goal. But you have to remember that that's not where we're at in most businesses at the moment. This makes quite stark reading. In the top right-hand corner, we have the number of work-related deaths recorded in the UK last year at 147. Now, there is a massive industry. The HSE, there are governing bodies, there are departments within your workplace that look after and manage that little number of 147 in the top corner to try and keep that as low as possible. And they do an amazing job. They are doing really well. To have 147 deaths in a year, whilst not ideal, is amazing. However, there were 6,507 suicides in the UK and Northern Ireland last year. And that becomes prolific statistics later on. So who in your workplace is looking after the 6,507? So, pass back to Adam.
So I think it's really important that we talk about this because this makes us understand what we need to do for people that enter our workplace. So if we look at the statistics on here, suicide is unfortunately one of the biggest killers of our younger generation. I'm not going to spend too long looking at it, but it's, massive. So I think that's sort of 5 to 19-year-olds. It's the highest risk to them. That's through their school lives. We're then talking about it coming into the workplace. So it's the highest suicide rate between 20 and 34. And it goes on in men 35 to 49. And then obviously we know the cancers come in for different genders. Now it's interesting that this isn't really recorded in the workplace, and we'll go on sort of a bit about that. But they're now starting to add sort of the LGBT stats into this, as we know that's an increasing area of struggle for people. So these stats will change to include those in the coming years, which I think is right. But that just shows the diversity we've also got to work with now, and the inclusion that we've got to create in our workplace. So, you know, the reason to show this is really important. You know, we start so young on our journey, and suicide plays a part in that. And I think it was something that you said, that there were the number of suicides, people with suicide that were diagnosed with mental health issues.
Yeah, the number of people who die by suicide, 90% of those people have a diagnosed mental health condition.
So, as I say, it's showing us the journey through to the start, and this is where we now need to start looking at when it comes into the workplace. You know, these statistics are out there for us to see, and we all need to understand them. And then we now need to translate that into actually what we're doing when these people join our businesses and what we're actually moving them forward for. So on that.
So, talking about moving it into business and what you guys can do to help your staff and teams. So 53% of poor mental health cases are directly related to the workplace. And this is a study done from between 2013 and 2015. That's 53% of people who are recorded having a mental health issue are directly correlating it to work. Now, I don't want to put the statistics together, but if you consider that 90% of people who die by suicide have a mental health condition, you can see where the drivers may be. But think of that stat for a minute, 53%. If 53% of all broken legs, to use Adam's analogy, happened in the workplace, what would happen? You'd be forced to do, you would be forced to do something. If 53% of cancer was caused by the workplace environment, the government would force you to act, and you would be obliged to act. But the biggest impact on your staff, which is their mental health, we don't have a regulatory body for as yet. We don't manage, we don't monitor. So who does? Who should it sit with? Now this is the big age-old question. Does it sit with your health and safety team? It's health. It's keeping them safe. Well, but they're predominantly designed to protect your employees from task-based hazards. Does it sit with your ER and HR team, who, as much as we like to think they're there for employees, they are there to protect employees from each other and to some extent protect the company from the employees and distance themselves. So where do you put them? Who in your business is driving the change to look after the biggest cause of mental health in your teams? So Adam did a little bit of research,
which I thought was quite shocking, but it stands for itself. So I decided just to look, because I'm from Basingstoke, have a look, see how many wellbeing managers jobs or wellbeing focused jobs were available in Basingstoke for anyone to take over. Looked through 8 pages of Indeed and found 0. I then basically looked at health and safety managers, and I found 8 on the first page, and then 14 HR managers listed on the first page. So as you can just see by that, we are way behind the curve in understanding the real reason that we are designing offices in the way that we're doing it, because we don't have the people or the jobs within our businesses or the availability of jobs in our businesses for people to focus on. So I go back to that first part. You have to understand at the beginning all the way through to when they come to your door. And looking at the stats, Basingstoke is a massive employment town. It's, I think, ranked the 8th richest town in the UK. So you would expect, with a lot of very, very large businesses there, to find some kind of job that focused on the well-being of people.
Now, unfortunately, you could say the flip side of that is that Basingstoke is very forward-thinking and leading the industry and having well-being. I know Basingstoke, it's not like that at all. So, if we go on to some more work statistics, and these are statistics taken from the HSE website. So, quickly run through. Self-reported non-fatal injuries, 7 days or more off work, which are reportable to the HSE. 154,000 reported last year. Self-reported non-fatal injuries up to 6 days. There were 441,000. I don't know why I'm reading the numbers because you can see them all. But the biggest impact for me is musculoskeletal injuries is the second largest cause of time off at work. The largest being work-related stress, depression or anxiety. And it is almost double the number of days, well, it's over double the number of days. 6.6 million days lost to musculoskeletal injuries, 15.4 million days lost to work-related stress, depression and anxiety. And those are the only people that owned up to it. There are people who will have turned around and said, I have got a cold, I'm not coming in today, I'm not feeling very well, my child is ill, can't go to school, I need to stay at home. And if we look at the average days lost due to musculoskeletal injuries, which we have to report, it's 14 under the HSE regulations. Average days lost to work-related stress, depression or anxiety, 25.8 days. If work-related stress, depression and anxiety were classed as an industrial disease, it would be reportable to the HSE. And that is quite a scary thing that we don't have to at the moment. So, statistics and horrible bits out of the way. What do we do? How do we go on? How do we move forward? So Adam's now going to talk to you about what you can do in the building, in the environment, to make it better.
I am going to cover that, but I also think that we're not getting this right. Because what's the difference between an office and a building site and any other factory or anything else that we want to look at? And I think a gentleman said earlier that they just built this brand new swish new head office and left the 100-year-old factory sat next to it, and it created a them and us kind of situation within their business. You know, we were talking about the rail sites where you might have really nice Siemens head offices, etc., and then we're looking at the depots. You know, we can do this through retail stores. We can, you know, work at a B&Q, lovely head office, great space. You know, some of our stores did not reflect what we had in the office, and we concentrate on offices, don't we? We concentrate on the us and where we will be working. You know, I find it very difficult that we haven't sort of challenged ourselves. So we give ourselves great cafes, we give ourselves gyms, we go and have, you know, chill out space to go and think, we give ourselves time to breathe. You know, I'm not actually sure it's working, looking at the stats, might add. But it might make us feel good that we're actually building something that looks nice. But actually, looking at the stats, if we're changing the place we're working, it's not helping. You know, the stats don't lie. You know, we are still not helping and engaging the younger people to actually understand how we build in their well-being to the place that we work. We've created this thought and this feeling that this makes a huge difference. And it might do in the short term. But let's be honest, we still have typical building sites out there like this, you know, the old portaloo, the old sort of cabin. What do when we don't have somewhere nice and swanky to put them? We go to the cheapest hire company, probably in the country, put in some porta toilets. At least they've got somewhere to go to the toilet. We put in some average kind of canteen facilities, but we don't know if they're clean. We don't know what condition they're in. We've just gone. What's that? The irony of the welfare. Yeah. And it just gets put down. And then we think, yep, we've done our bit, that's great. You know. And there are things that we should be doing for all of our generations, because let's be honest, when we're creating all these lovely work offices, which, you know, do make you feel better, but I'm not sure they're changing how people are really feeling inside. We can, you know, build inside. You know, why do we not put showers in? You know, at the end of the day, you've got to get in the car, got to get on their tube, got to travel from somewhere. You know, we just expect them to leave covered in the work dust that they're in. That's just what we do. It's just what we expect. We don't create a canteen where they can sit down, where people are serving them food, and well, some people do, but that's Battersea, by the way. So people have put some attention to it, but it's not what we do every single day, is it? And then decent toilets, that have water rather than the porter. So, yeah, that's going to make you feel a little bit better, isn't it? It's going to make you feel a bit more important about yourself, But again, I just want to go back to those kind of stats when we're talking about suicide and it being so high in men and being so high in young men. And then you look at the demographic of where they work. A lot of them aren't just working in offices. A lot of them are working on the building sites of this world where we just think perception, big, strong, don't need to worry about them. And they're quite happy to go to the toilet in that portaloo. They're quite happy to go home covered in dirt. They're quite happy to do this. They're men. It's fine. There's women in that as well. It's just that kind of stereotypical drive that we just suddenly put in. Bigger, larger, rugby. Skinny, looks fast, football. We do it all the time. And that's why we always look past the root symptoms and causes of when these people are coming to our workplace. Because if I go from one building site to the other, and I still haven't asked that person how they're feeling, does it make that much difference? Do I still understand them? I've just created something that looks and feels a bit better, makes me look and feel a little bit better. It's that question of what does it do for them? Now we try and put standards in, which we'll go into. So, this one me? Yeah. Very briefly. So we do wellbeing standards. Well, the well standards, isn't it? So we talk about air quality, water quality, lighting, acoustic, comfort. If we look at Mind's wellbeing standards, promote wellbeing for all staff, tackle the cause of work-related mental health issues, support staff. Again, why are the two not together? So why have we created a standard called the Well Standard that doesn't concentrate on the person at all? It concentrates on the environment around them, and actually doesn't concentrate on the environment that person and the human being is actually in. So we can provide this in every single workplace. Doesn't matter what you do. But it might not always be the same way. We've just looked at very different things, from a physical point of view. And we can give this to every person. So we can do the Mind wellbeing standard for every single person. But our perception, I think, sometimes, and our perception on mental health and everything else stops us actually really asking the right questions.
We're going to have to whiz through the next few slides quite quickly, but how many companies in here have run a wellbeing survey in their office? So what questions did you ask? At any point, did the question, how are you feeling, come up? Anybody's wellbeing survey said that. Now, going back to, I think it was Kate's point earlier on about the Q12, it's a great system, but it needs to have on the bottom of it, how are you actually feeling? Because without that, you don't know. Because you tend to assume people are okay because they tell you that they're not. Okay, so a couple of ideas, and these are taken kind of from the Mind website as to how you can promote well-being. If you can, institute flexible working hours. It's not always going to be the way. If you're on a building site and you've got to get something done by 12 o'clock, it needs to be done. But then that person needs to be able to switch off when their job is done. If not, they need to have, if you can, put flexible working hours in, do. Everybody can focus on personal development, and that was touched on in an L&D session earlier on. If you make it about that person, they will want to work for you and they will work hard for you. If you can allow remote days, you can urge 6 people to stay at home. I had to have a conversation with a manager the other day. He was in going, nose, sweat, blood, all over the place. I was like, just go home. I can't, I've got too much to do. Well, you're setting a bad example for your team and you're making the rest of your team ill, so they will therefore take time off. But the big one for me is promote mental health awareness and counselling. Obviously, because that's what I do, that's why that's on there. Please, don't be afraid to have those conversations. And to wrap up, because we have to, it doesn't matter how little or how much you do, you have to do it well. If all you have influence on is tea, toilets and Tipp-Ex, make sure those toilets are fantastic. Make sure that tea is right. Make sure there's a fridge for the milk. Make sure that somebody can get that piece of stationery that they need to get, because that might just be the driver of pushing somebody over the edge because they've just hit that point. Their stress container is full. And if that is not an easy journey in the workplace, that might tip them over the edge. You can have a car park with 999 spaces in and offer free car parking. But if you have 1,000 employees, one person is isolated. And that will tend to be the person who is working part-time, has to drop the kids off at school, has to leave home, has to leave work early, and then walk 20 minutes into work. So whatever you do, please make sure you do it well and you ask the question,